Okay. There's something called self-deauthorization. That's where we don't give ourselves permission to lead. We don't give ourselves permission to succeed. Okay? But even if you're a specialist and you don't have anyone reporting to you, you're still leading, aren't you? You're leading because as you give that presentation to those senior stakeholders, that's leadership. You're taking people from A to B. And leaders move people. Leaders are people who can take people from A to B. Not by coercion, but by influence, where the people want to move, right? Where the people enjoy the move, okay? That's leadership. Earlier on today, I was speaking to the staff from a high school, the high school that my kids go to. And I was saying to them, one of the saddest things is that often teachers see themselves as just teachers and not leaders. But I said, you know that the moment you walk into your classroom, you've got those 20 kids or 25 kids, however many they are, and they report to you. If you ask those kids, who are you reporting to right now? It's like the teacher. So even as teachers, you're a leader. Parents, you're a leader. Older siblings, you're a leader. Because you've got the younger ones in your family looking up to you. Amen. All right? So I've got the 12 Ds of world-class leadership. The 12 Ds of world-class leadership that I designed a number of years ago. And I use this when I'm coaching people one-on-one, but also in public speaking. And what's powerful is the 12 Ds, it's basically a process I went through where I said, what are the qualities of a great leader? And I came up with 12 things easy to remember because they all start with D. So you've got the deliberate leader, the dynamic leader, the distinguished leader, the dialoguing leader, the deploying leader, that's to do with delegation. So they all start with D. The disciplined leader, the dedicated leader, they all start with D. And each one is a seminar on its own. It's a talk on its own. And so today we're going to focus on the deliberate leader. Right? Now, my natural leadership style, because of my personality, I'm a sunshine yellow, right? And so I lead by inspiration. I'm the kind of person who will say, everyone close your eyes. Imagine if the world looked like. But what I've realized is that you can think just by speaking to people and casting vision, that they will just run with the vision. But how many of you know that that doesn't always work? So I've realized that I have to also learn to lead from my blue space, which I haven't been very good at, but I'm trying to be more deliberate. And that's where you see the deliberate leader. So here's some of the principles in terms of leading deliberately. These are all affirmations, by the way. They're all affirmations. Each of them is an affirmation, right? I'm a social architect who intentionally builds a specific culture in my team. That's an affirmation of a deliberate leader. I'm a social architect who intentionally builds a specific culture in my team. So leaders create culture. So my question to you is, are you clear about the culture you want to create in your team? And remember, it's whether it's at work, whether it's the culture of the whole organization, if you're leading an organization, right? So remember with culture, there's national culture, there's organizational culture, then there's your team culture, all right? So what is culture? Your culture is your values, your norms, and your beliefs. Great organizations have strong cultures, don't they? There's the GE way, there's the Coca-Cola way, there's the McDonald's way, right? And that's because great leaders create culture. So even in your home, you can say, what culture do we want to create? We want to create a culture of mutual respect. We want to create a culture of learning. So recently I said to the kids, guys, we're reducing your computer game time, and we're going to have quiet moments. If I just say, okay, guys, the next hour is quiet, then it's quiet. And you have to either be practicing a musical instrument or reading. Why am I doing that? I want to create a culture of learning, right? So there's specific things you can do as a leader to create culture. How is culture created? Culture is created by what you teach. So if you want a culture of teamwork, you have to teach teamwork. You have to explain to people, hey, this is what a team looks like, right? This is the difference between a team and a group, so you teach it. But how many of you know that very often as leaders, we say to our followers, man, you guys, I've told you this many times, but you're still not listening, right? That's because just talking about it doesn't always help. Sometimes we think if we preach at a problem, then we've solved it. right? Sometimes when I'm counseling couples, they just think, if I just tell my husband, or if the pastor just tells my husband, then he'll change. Telling someone doesn't always solve the problem. So you create culture by what you teach, but you also create culture by what you model. You also create culture by what you model. Remember, I always do that thing with you guys, right? Everyone look at me. Right? Touch your cheek. Okay. Even clever guys like Taffy are touching their chin, right? But I said touch your cheek. Right, exactly. So why do you touch your chin? Because that's what you saw me doing. So people don't do what is heard, what they hear you saying. People will do what they see you doing. That's why you see people saying, my boss comes to work late, so why should I also come early? I'll also come late. Right? Right? My boss is rude to clients. He doesn't return their calls, or he doesn't return their emails, respond to their emails. So why should I? So you create culture by, number one, what you teach. Number two, what you model. You also create culture by what you reward. What's rewarded in your workplace? That will be the culture. And guys, don't create culture by default. It will always be created. Rather created by design. You create culture by what you reward. You create culture also by what you celebrate. What's celebrated in your family? What's celebrated in your church? What's celebrated in your workplace? That becomes the culture. Have you noticed that very often when you join an organization, you actually adapt to the organization, don't you? And you adapt based on what? Based on what you perceive is rewarded. And your perception of what's rewarded is based on your perception of what's promoted. And your perception of what's promoted is based on who's currently in leadership. Because in your mind, these are the people who've been celebrated and rewarded. And so that's why a lot of times people become like their boss. Why? Because they think that's what's celebrated. That's how culture is created in the workplace. Okay? You create culture by what you reward. You create culture by what you celebrate. So often in many organizations today, people will say, you know what, we want a culture of teamwork, but they only reward individuals. Have you noticed that? They only reward at an individual level. They don't reward the whole team. There's nothing wrong with rewarding individually, but if you're saying we want to create a team culture, you have to come to a place of also rewarding the team. Okay? So that's an interesting one. How else do you create culture? Culture is created by the rituals that you have. So if you want to create a culture of belonging, for example, what do you do? Celebrate birthdays. Celebrate birthdays. Celebrating a birthday is one of the only rituals where you're celebrating someone for just existing. Have you noticed that? They haven't performed. In fact, you might have given them a bad review the previous week. But the following week, you're the one who's there and you're singing, he's a jolly good fellow, he's a jolly good fellow. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the person is on performance management. Okay? So you create culture by your rituals. Culture is also created by how leaders react and respond to crises. Culture is created by how leaders react and respond to crises. So people are always watching you and they're trying to see, okay, not just in the good times, but how are you behaving in the bad times? When there's cost freeze at work, when you're stressed out, when people are being fired left, right, and center, or there's retrenchment or restructuring, or in the church, someone has just been stepped down because of moral failure. People are looking at you as a leader and they want to see, who do you run to? Who do you talk to? Okay? And based on that, culture is created. Because they're judging you not just on the good times, but also the bad times. Does that make sense? Okay? So can you see that culture is created by many different things? Culture is also created by what's punished. If people do certain things, for example, in a church setting, and we never talk about it, we never address it, we never confront them, we never preach about it, how many of you know that we've created culture? Because we've said it's okay to do that. Very often in a church setting, the culture is created by what's considered to be the biggest sin around. And if the pastor is always preaching against that particular thing, if people are being shunned based on that particular thing, then culture is being created. So culture is created by what's rewarded, but it's also created by what's punished. Does that make sense? There are a lot of churches today where if people commit adultery and there's infidelity and so on, it's like pastors don't even talk about it. It's like it's fine. The guys are there, they're in leadership, still doing their thing. Culture is created. Or if the pastor messes up that way, then you see the whole church also doing it, or many people in the church. And it's considered okay, because it's kind of like hush, hush, hush. But in other places, when you do certain things, let's say there's greed, and people are sort of like doing those deals that are sort of like, just a bit suspect. And then you hear that, oh, this person had to be stepped down because of greed and profiteering. How many of you know that they've created culture? They've created culture. All right? So my question to you is, are you a social architect who's intentionally building a specific culture in your team? You see, buildings like this, they were designed by architects, right? They were designed by architects. But you as a leader, you're a social architect. What does a social architect do? Social architect creates culture. They create culture and they create climate. Secondly, I'm a social architect who creates the climate of my team. I'm a social architect who creates the climate of my team. As a leader, you create climate. How is this different to culture? I said to you, culture is your values, your norms, and your beliefs. What is climate? Another word we could put there is mood. Mood. Okay? When I go home after this, the mood I'm in will affect how the next few days go. So as a leader in my family, I must be conscious of what I bring to my household. I must be conscious of how I show up. You see, in the workplace today, there are a lot of leaders who are not conscious of how they show up. They're not self-aware because their EQ, their emotional intelligence, is quite low. So they just pitch up and they're all stressed out and they don't care how they show up. And what does everyone do? Everyone is trading on eggshells around you. You have that impact. Sadly, some people's emotional intelligence is so low, they're not even aware of that. I've said to you before, just talking about the family situation, a lot of us are very good at preparing to go to work, right? Few of us are good at preparing to go back home afterwards. I want to encourage you, how you are and how you show up with your kids, with your spouse, your husband, your wife, the people at home, will affect the mood, the climate. One of the ways of changing the climate in your workplace, in your team, wherever you're with, your oikos, the people around you, is having a good sense of humor. I feel that a good sense of humor is actually a leadership quality. Some research was carried out some time back where they actually got a number of high-performing star leaders and then some average leaders. And these guys had to speak to a group of people. The high-performing star leaders got 4 times as many laughs out of the crowd than the average ones. Now, having a good sense of humor is not the same as cracking a joke. You can crack a joke but not have a good sense of humor. You see, a good sense of humor is being able to laugh at yourself. A good sense of humor is being able to walk into a meeting and diffuse the tension because of your humor. The person with the greatest sense of humor isn't always the one who cracks the joke. Sometimes it's the one who just finds things funny and can laugh. You know, there are those people you always see them laughing and they've got an infectious laugh, but they're not the ones cracking the joke. They just find things funny. And that's a wonderful thing. And we call it a sense of humor because it's actually a sense. And if it's a sense, it means it's something that you can actually develop. Right? Getting people to laugh in a team setting is one of the quickest ways of changing the atmosphere in the room. Does that make sense? Okay? So what's the climate in your organization right now? Do you keep complaining about it, or do you see yourself as a powerful leader who goes in and can literally influence that climate? Is there low morale? What are you doing as a leader to shift the mood? Great leaders can do that. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of people who keep complaining and they say, my team is so negative. Or my team just speaks about negative stuff. I remember one lady came to me and she said, Paul, you know what? I have to have lunch with my team and they're just negative. And I say, first of all, you don't have to always have lunch with your team. You can have lunch with other people. In fact, in the workplace, that's actually a good way of connecting, not just having lunch with the same people all the time and becoming a subgroup or a clique. And I said, But if you have to have lunch with them, you've got power to change and shape the direction of the conversation. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of people who want to change the world. We want to do this, then we'll do that, then we'll do that. But they can't even change the direction of a conversation with a group of friends. You see where I'm going when I'm talking about this? That you're a social architect who can actually create the climate of your team. Many moms today, they pitch up at home and they're wondering, why are my kids so highly strung? I'm such a principled person, I discipline them well, but they're so highly strung. And you know what I say to them? I say they're absorbing you. They're absorbing you. Remember the whole principle. Consciously, and this is very powerful, consciously we teach what we know. Unconsciously we pass on who we are. So you can teach what you know to your kids and say wonderful things to them, but at the end of the day, you are passing on who you are. And if the stuff on your inside isn't great, the climate around you won't be great. Okay. The third affirmation of a deliberate leader is this: I love to communicate my leadership philosophy to my team. I love to communicate my leadership philosophy to my team. When was the last time you sat down with a group of people at work, or with your family at home, or with your small group? There are a number of small group leaders here, right? And actually communicated to them your leadership philosophy. You see, great leaders have a way. Some time ago, there was a guy I was coaching in a pharmaceutical. He headed up a particular business unit. This was a few years ago. His name was Zweli. And I said to him, Zweli, what's Zweli's way? He says, Paul, I didn't know I had a way. I said, you do have a way. Great leaders have a way. And I said, let me help you to discover what your way is, Zweli. And I said, Zweli, can you tell me the people that irritate you, the people that you hope get retrenched, the people that just frustrate you, the people who you want to manage out of the business, tell me their ingredients, Zweli. Paul, you know what? They're not proactive. They pretend they're clued up, but they're actually clueless. They lie, they backbite, they're not loyal. He listed a number of things. Then I said to him, the people you want to promote, the people that fill up your tank, the people that don't drain you, tell me what their ingredients are. And he made another list. Paul, they're proactive. Paul, they go the extra mile. They're team players. They don't complain and say, it's not in my job description. He listed a number of things similar to what I've just told you. I said to him, Zweli, you've just shown me what your way is. You've just shown me Zweli's way. And we had such a powerful moment when we then had a team session. And he said, you know what? I didn't know I had a way, but Paul has helped me out in this process. Guys, I just want to tell you, if you want things to go well between us, do the following. He gave the list. And guys, if you want us to always be at loggerheads with each other, do the following. Gave him a list. That's Zweli's way. Now you see, some people resist this because they're like, Paul, it sounds arrogant. Recently I was coaching some people and they say, Paul, you know what? They'll discover after some time what my way is. But I don't like sit them down and then tell them, this is my way and this is how you have to function. So sometimes we have to give ourselves permission to lead. And as a leader, it's important to be able to say, guys, I'm not like your former boss. Now you might not say it like that. But you have to tell them deliberately, this is who I am. Do you know what that actually does? Anxiety levels will go down. Anxiety levels go down in the team because they know, oh, okay, this is what this person's expectations are. And guys, you know what? It's powerful doing this whether you're leading a team or not. You know that you can do this upward, hey? Where you can go up to your boss and actually say, you know what? I've learned a few things lately, and I just want to help you to get the most out of me. This is how you get the most out of me. If you do the following things, A, B, C, D. But if you want to demotivate me, do the following, X, Y, Z. It's called upward influence. These conversations are not limited to just when you are leading a team formally. You can also do it upward. It's called leading from the middle. Remember, there are people that report to you, and you're leading them. Then you can lead sideways with different stakeholders, your peers, your colleagues, who are at the same level. But you can also lead upward. I don't have a problem in a church setting, someone coming and saying to me, Paul, you know what? In order for you to really get the most out of me, this is my working style. This is what I love. Paul, I just want to tell you a few things about me. The things that will cause me to leave, the things that really drain me and upset me are the following. That will actually help me to lead you. Does that make sense? And very often we have these fallouts with each other. Why? Because we didn't know. There's almost this thing of, if I'm a great leader, I must just know. Often I coach people and they're like, yeah, I'm figuring out this one, and I'm figuring out this one. And I say to them, just go and ask them. It's a bit like romance, isn't it, in a marriage situation? You know, some people have this thing of like, well, if he loves me, he must just know what I like. No. There's that book, Men Don't Read Minds, they read newspapers. Okay, and then a lady corrected me the other day, and she said, and also women, Paul, also women. Okay, also women. All right? Now, some of you, if you struggle having this type of conversation with the people at work or, people who are following your leadership, because you feel like I'm being arrogant and so on, what you do is you sit them down and then you get them to first share, like with each other, and to basically share how do they want to be drawn out, how do they want to be managed. And then each of them share. And you don't just ask them on the spot, because there's some people who can't wing it, okay? You basically get them to prepare, and they come up with a list. This is the stuff that drains me, this is the stuff that energizes me, right? They do that. Even if you've got a project that you're running, do that. Find out from the people, right? And then you get them to share in the group first, and then afterwards you then say, okay, you've shared from your perspective. I just now want to show you this is Paul's way, okay? In this setting, by now you guys should know the things I like, things I don't like, okay? I remember there was a time I did a leadership talk and I explained it, but I'm now looking at the group here, and quite a lot of you weren't there at the time, but I will do so. For example, I like to work with people who are proactive. So they don't ask me every 2 seconds, can I do this? Can I do this? Because they're too afraid of making a mistake, okay? I'd rather have people who go out, make things happen, and then ask for forgiveness later on, okay? Right? That's my style, right? Another thing is I like people who are self-learners. Self-learners, where I can say, guys, here's a book, read it. Let's discuss it afterwards. People who don't wait for a seminar or a talk in order to learn, right? Thirdly, I like it when people give me feedback. This is how my cell group is going. Joan is very good at that. I think it's that project manager side of his and so on in the workplace and so on. This is how my group is going. This happened, this happened, this happened. Okay? I'm actually interested, right? But sometimes because of time and my current situation, if I told you what my days look like, I don't always go up to you guys and say, how's this area going? How's your department going? But I actually appreciate it, right? But there's no set rule. I'm not going to say, every single head of department, give me monthly updates, okay? But you figure out a process of updating me, right? And then at least there's a rhythm there. Okay, we just want to tell you, this is the latest, this is who's coming. But I'm learning to be more deliberate, so I'm going to make it easy for people, and I'm going to come up with a template. Okay, how many of you would like that? A nice template just for the updates, okay? Then it's there. And then there's that order and there's that system. All right? I like people who are team players, people who don't hold their position so tightly, people who are agile, where we can say, you know what, you've done a great job, Sipo, on the video camera, running our media team. Dude, you've been awesome. But, hey, we've got someone else who's come in where that's the thing. They're really, really passionate about this. Can you now focus on this other area? Right? I like working with people who are secure and they're not sensitive. So you can give them feedback. Hey, brother so-and-so, when you were preaching the other day, just be careful because this verse, you took it out of context. Right? And people aren't offended. Right? And for me, what I'm really enjoying about this setup here is that the people who are now here are people who really want to be here. So it's such a pleasure just working with people. There's some people who left and came back, but the comeback version is better than the version that left. And it's so cool. It's so cool. The relationship and so on, you can see a difference. You can see humility in people. You can see a brokenness where you're like, sure, we just want to graft together, we just want to work together. So it's exciting, okay? So I love to communicate my leadership philosophy to my team. As you grow as a leader, it's important to have a clear philosophy of leadership. And for some of you, you're figuring it out. Some of you, you're still leading how you were led, but you haven't questioned that. You haven't pressed pause to actually say, let me just take this stuff, that's good. This other stuff, I don't want to be this kind of leader. Okay? I was speaking to Tafi the other day, and he was very clear about what he's like. You know, he said to me, this and this happened, Paul. We're talking about a different context, not this context. And he just said, like, yeah, because the thing about me is team is important, and I like the whole team thing. You know, that's an important value for me. So he's aware of it, right? And he said, so I had a disagreement with this group of people because I don't think we're on the same page when it comes to teamwork. Ask yourself, what's the thing that pushes your buttons? Right? What's the thing that pushes your buttons? Because I can tell you right now, that thing that pushes your button is indicative of what your leadership philosophy is. Does that make sense? Okay. The next affirmation of a deliberate leader is this: I make sure that I clarify expectations with my team members. I make sure that I clarify expectations with my team members. One of the things that we've found is if you don't clarify the win, strong personalities come up with their own wins. You know what I'm talking about? Strong personalities come up with their own wins. Okay? I appreciated something Joan said to me recently. He phoned me and he says, Pastor, I just wanted to find out, can you just clarify your expectations with regards to the foundations group that we are running? Because we're running with stuff, but you might have certain expectations. Can you clarify them? Guys, when you go into the workplace, when you do the various projects you do, some of you are entrepreneurs, when you go in and you're doing business deals and so on, the other person won't always be clear about their expectations. But you, because you understand these principles, can be proactive about it and actually say, can you clarify the expectations? Do you know what will happen if you don't do this? You will feel that trust has been eroded. Why? I've been in a situation where a particular person, I won't mention the name of the organization, but they got to a point where they'd been given a warning. I think it was a written warning, right? Then afterwards, they were getting unclear instructions. They were saying, Paul, they want me to do this, but I'm not clear about it. Paul, I actually think they want to manage me out. They're setting me up to fail. That's how cynical she had become, okay? And that's how you can start feeling. Maybe I'm being set up to fail because they're not being clear. Sometimes trust is also eroded because of scope creep. You all know scope creep, right? Those of you, some of you IT people, some of you construction people, you know what I'm talking about, all right? And that's where typically you're asked to do a particular thing. They'll say to you, can you come and help us out, please? Then you think you're just assisting. 2 weeks down the line, hey, Tabs, can you give us a progress report on this? How's everything going? Hey, I thought I was just assisting. 4 weeks down the line, so what are the next steps, Tabs? Huh? I'm now leading this thing, okay? And trust is eroded. And sometimes people will do this. They won't be clear about the expectations. You know why? They like to sneak up upon you. So it's like, we really want Sonera to do X, Y, Z. But for now, let's just tell her A and B. And then once she asks, oh, A and B, oh, that's fine. And then, yeah, no, we actually really also want you to do C, D, E. Can you see what's happening? Then after a while, she feels trapped. You guys trapped me. You knew I'd be overwhelmed if I knew the big picture. You guys had secret agendas. So be clear about expectations. So this is what I found concerning a lot of leaders. They are clear about the outcome they want. They're very clear about the outcome. They say, guys, this is what we want to achieve. But they're not clear about a number of other things. They're not clear about the quality. So their boss then asks them, did Tendai complete the task? Right? And the feedback they get is, yes, he did. But deep down inside, it's like, didn't quite do it the way I wanted, but yeah, I guess we can tick. So when it comes to clarity of expectations, you're clear about outcome, you're clear about quality. Okay? You're also clear about process. Because there's some people who've got great quality, great outcome, but they don't follow the rules in terms of methodology and process. And how many of you know, some of you have joined organizations recently, right? And the big thing is not, I don't know how to do the work. The big thing is, I'm learning their systems. I'm learning their processes. Even in a church setting, very often we will have people come in and, they're just so anointed. God really wants to use them, but they still have to check their bags in. You know, like even the pilot of a plane, the captain has to check in his bags. Doesn't matter how much experience he has out there, but they still have to go through a process to understand what is your emphasis, what is your philosophy of ministry. Okay? Then the other area we have to be clear about in terms of expectations is the how. Because there's some people who are very good at following the process. They're very good in terms of outcome, the goal. They're very good in terms of quality. But when it comes to the how, and I'm talking about the interpersonal how, there are a lot of needless casualties of war all around. Because the person is weak when it comes to people skills, right? And it's like, man, that guy is so anointed, but rude. Man, that guy can teach, so powerfully, but doesn't treat his family well. He's a slave driver in terms of how he leads his department. The deliberate leader is deliberate about expectations, but not just expectations when it comes to outcome. Expectations in all those dimensions. Does that make sense? Okay. The next affirmation of a deliberate leader is, I am effective in monitoring and evaluating the performance of my team. I've been speaking to leaders about this, and they'll say to me, Paul, you know what? I just check at the end. How many of you are like that? Yeah, I just check when the project is done, or a day before the deadline. How many of you have been in situations where you think everything is fine, you check the day before the project is done, and what happens? You see that you have to do an all-nighter reworking it. Okay? So this is important, guys. It's important in whatever we're doing, whatever we're trying to build, that we are monitoring and we're evaluating. And very often it involves difficult conversations, doesn't it? You know, in a church setting, it's not easy. Why? Because you're managing volunteers, because we're all volunteering, right? So we're managing volunteers, and sometimes you're like, it's fine, sure. I'm just grateful that at least they've volunteered to play this role and run this department. I can't be too harsh, right? But giving feedback doesn't mean you're being harsh. Monitoring and evaluation doesn't mean you're being harsh. It's actually helping the person. But don't wait until it's deadline day, right? Because if you can tweak things right near the beginning, what happens? Then we haven't wasted time. The backlash a lot of times that we experience is someone says, how come you're only telling me 3 months into the project? We've been running this cell group for 9 months, and only now you're telling us how to do it. Okay? Now, some people resist this because they say, Paul, I've got internal conflict. I've got inner conflict. I know I need to monitor and evaluate, but my challenge is that I don't want to come across like I am micromanaging. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Okay? So how do you deal with that? How do I monitor and evaluate something that Taffy is doing when the other day Taffy said the one thing he likes about me is I don't micromanage? Can you see the leadership challenge that we go through? We're talking, I was with Stuart and with Taffy, and we're talking, and they're all saying nice things about me and my style. And Taffy says, yeah, and I also like, one of the things I like about you, Pastor Paul, is you don't micromanage, you let us just run with stuff. How do I tomorrow now say, let's do monitoring and evaluation and see what's happening in your area? Can you see the challenges we go through? Because my self-concept, the way I see myself as a leader who trusts people. So how do I do this? Well, there are a number of things you can do. The way you can monitor and evaluate without coming across like you're micromanaging is that you make a decision at the start of the project and you tell the person, this is when we are going to review it. So you're not just reviewing when there's a crisis. You're basically saying, you know what, we're going to have a monthly meeting, and at that monthly meeting, we'll sit down and you'll give me updates on how things are going. Why is that important? A lot of people do knee-jerk reviews. I remember one leader said, yeah, Paul, the thing I don't like is when we have these leaders, in times of crises, that's when you start getting 20 emails from them all of a sudden, right? And then you're like, there's panic. And have you noticed that when people are panicking, it's infectious, isn't it? I remember one organization, I said, you guys feed off each other. If someone says a negative thing in the meeting, everyone then becomes negative. Someone says a positive thing, there's that group think, and everyone becomes positive. They said, Paul, it's so true. They said that we feel the tension. They had an L-shaped open plan setup. They said, it starts over there in that corner, and you see it actually spreads like that, okay? And so, sit down with your people and say to them, this is when we are going to do the reviewing. And don't react in terms of, that knee-jerk reaction where all of a sudden you want to check everything. Does that make sense? Okay. But monitoring and evaluation is important, is very important, guys. Okay. The next affirmation of a deliberate leader is this one. I create an environment where my team is self-motivated. Many people think leadership is about motivating people. It's not. Leadership is about creating an environment or a climate where people become self-motivated. Otherwise, what happens when you're on leave? What happens if you're a pastor and you are preaching somewhere else? Someone once said, your church is not a strong church unless it's strong without you. And that's one of the principles that we've learned recently. Your church is not a strong church unless it's strong without you. If it's dependent on you always being there, checking this, checking that. That's why for me as a pastor, I'm so grateful in terms of the caliber of leaders that we have. That if we have to preach elsewhere, travel, or do whatever it was, things still happen. Some of you, in your areas where you are leading, you need to know your team or your department is not strong unless it's strong without you. Does that make sense? Your small group is not strong unless it's strong without you. Okay? Sometimes we end up in this thing where things can't happen unless we're there. Not healthy. Now, people are motivated by different things. So as a leader, I have to find out what is it that motivates Pastor Vim? What flicks a switch? What is it that motivates Charlton? What is it that motivates Loazi? And the only way I can truly find out is if I ask them more than 2 questions deep. Okay? So I'll go to Charlton and I'll say, Charlton, can you tell me what energizes you? And he'll tell me. Then I'll say, what energizes you in the context of leading your small group? Then he'll tell me. Then I'll say, what support do you need from me? Then he'll tell me. Then I'll say, Charlton, what drains you? Then he'll tell me. Then I'll say, Charlton, what have been the best moments you've had in running your group? Then he'll tell me. Charlton, what have been the worst moments? Then he'll tell me. Can you see, just by asking those questions, I'm gaining a lot of fodder. So I ask him. But then the other thing I can do is to observe. Because sometimes people can tell you something, but you also have to observe. As a leader, I have to be observing Loazi. I have to be observing him when he's having his happy moments. And I see that, he's very happy. And I try and figure out what are the ingredients that are bringing about that happiness. Does that make sense? So we must always be studying our people. Okay? One of the things I like doing is asking leaders, and I say, tell me. I remember recently I said to a guy, in your Manco, tell me, each person, because I was also coaching the people reporting to him, and I said, tell me, how do you motivate each person? Like, how do you get them to be self-motivated? And he went person by person saying, this one, they like opportunities with stakeholders. They like use the word sexy. They like the sexy projects, This one likes this. They like to be involved. They like to be included. This one, they like this. So as leaders, we have to be very intentional. I know what flicks Pastor Vim's switch. We've worked together for a long time. I know the type of things she likes. Some of the type of things she likes, it's so easy for me to just say, Vim, there's this situation. Can you run with this, please? And I know she'll be so energized doing it. Where other people, they would dread it. It would drain them. Does that make sense? Some of this is also to do with people's personality. I still remember some years ago, I said to my wife, yeah, my love, can you just phone up the following people and just make a plan and just do this and this? So now she had to phone up people that she didn't really know. And I noticed that she was procrastinating. So I'm like, how far? Like, what's happening? And then she schooled me. You know, sometimes we have to be schooled by our spouses. And she said, my love, you must just remember, I'm not like you. You're very extroverted, so for you, you can just talk to anyone, phone up anyone. For me, I sometimes like to know where I stand with that person. And that was important for me to understand that I might ask her to do things, and she can do them, she's able to do them, but it's not as easy. Something that energizes me might be something that drains her. I've worked with Sunera long enough to know some of the things that drain her. When we were away the other week, for example, I spoke to Joan and I said, Joan, just remember, like there'll be a number of people at the wedding and this will be the setup, there'll be this. So if you guys are at church, please can you just make sure, Joan, your type of stuff that you like doing. Just keep an eye out for this and this and this. And I knew it would energize him. He doesn't have a problem with it. He's confident with people. If you just spot any people. If I say to Sunera, just, on Sunday, just have a look out for first-time visitors. Just go up to them, Sunera, and just connect with them, bond, Just find out, like, what's happening and so on. Sunera will be like, Pastor Paul, we're not all the same, But if I say to her, Sunera, next week, can you just look at our inefficiencies in the church, just where the gaps, cracks, and leakages are, and come up with a plan to fix it? She's energized. You see where I'm going? People are wired differently, and leadership is being able to be flexible and to adapt. Now, if I was a leader who was not flexible, I'll be like, all of you guys, because you are leaders in a church setting, you need to do the following. These are our standards. After 3 months, some of you will be burnt out. Does that make sense? Okay. I create systems to help my team assess itself. Do you know that self-assessment is one of the qualities of a great team? A great team doesn't wait until the halfway mark of a game to get feedback from its coach. If people aren't passing the ball, there's enough mutual accountability for people to say, dude, you're being a glory boy, you're not passing. You need to learn to pass. Now, my question to you is, have you created a system to help your team or your small group to assess itself? How often, as a small group leader, do you sit down with your team and basically say, guys, how are we doing? You see, the essence, the key question here in terms of self-assessment is, are we improving? It's a powerful question to ask. Are we improving? And you know what you can do? Simple system. You basically say, we'll have a standing agenda for all our meetings. And in that agenda, one of our key questions is, are we improving? You've just created a system that helps your people to always be self-assessing. You know that people who are strong in giving themselves feedback, they're not that defensive, have you noticed, when you give them feedback? Because they've already assessed themselves. I didn't do too well there. I did a bit well there. Why? They've got a culture of learning. They want to learn, and they see feedback as an opportunity to learn. So I want to encourage you, whenever you do a function, let's say you do a kids ministry event, assess it afterwards, but have a system to help your team assess itself. Don't just be a thing where you as the leader are now saying like, so guys, I thought you did great. Great job, folks. No, get them to sit down and assess themselves. How did we do? And there are many other questions you can ask. There's, are we improving? What are our customers saying about us? In the setting of a church, guys, what are first-time visitors saying? You guys are on the ground. What do people complain the most about? You see, we're not defensive about those things. We've got explanations, not defensive. Okay? Very powerful question. The next affirmation of the deliberate leader is this: I know that you get what you inspect, so I inspect the deliverables of my people, my team. I like to ask people this question. If you've got a domestic helper at home, if you say to them, please can you dust the furniture every day? Is it going to happen every day? Let's be honest. Is it going to happen every day? Unless it's the type of helper who's like, I'm doing this for Jesus. I'm doing this for the Lord, as unto the Lord. Okay? But for the most part, it won't happen. Okay? It won't happen. Now, if you then go up to your furniture and then you do this, and you check and you look, and you see dust, and you give feedback. Day 1. Day 2. And you give feedback in another corner. You might not have to do day 3 and day 4. Does that make sense? Sipo and Maropeng, older Sipo and Maropeng, they don't have that problem. I've been to their house. It's like, you know those people where you feel like you can eat from the floor type of thing. And I was saying to them, is it because the pastor was arriving at your house that it's so clean, but you could see like that's just how they function. Anyway, right? So guys, you don't just get what you expect. You get what you inspect. You get what you inspect. The other day, Joan comes up to me and he says, Pastor, I don't want to get anyone in trouble or anything, but I just wanted to find out, does anyone actually check how well the place is cleaned? Like, does anyone actually check? Because sometimes we come and we kind of see things a certain way. And I said to him, you know what? Sometimes there are events that happen after the person has cleaned. But to be honest with you, how many of you as church leaders go around checking, is there dust on the speakers and that kind of thing, and then give feedback? But I felt challenged by that question because I don't. I pay our cleaning lady. I think she does a, good enough job and so on. And I'm thinking it's fine, But yeah, there are times, where you might go and you see a bit of dust here and there, etc. Right? We don't get what we expect. We get what we inspect. If you ask me the question, Paul, do you know exactly what's going on in every single Go group and so on? Sometimes I also don't want to discourage Go group leaders. I'm not talking about now, but historically. You know what I mean? If you go to a Go group leader and say, how's the group going? And they're like, they're just 2 people, we'll see. And then you kind of get the feeling that, okay, people were sort of traveling in between and maybe they didn't meet that night and so on. You don't want to keep going up somewhere. So how's the group going? Type of thing. But we have to be inspecting what's happening. Amen. It brings about an accountability. I monitor and evaluate the current systems used by my team. So what you're monitoring and evaluating is not just the outcome. It's also the system. Are our systems working? So as a church, we could sit down as leaders, okay, and I'm going to have a meeting that involves this soon, where we say, how are our systems? See, we spoke to a particular church leader where their church has just exploded recently, right? There were a few hundred or so, and then they literally just exploded in number, right? In the west of Joburg. And a friend of mine, a common friend of ours, said he asked the people, and more recently I mentioned it to that particular pastor, and she said to me, this is the wife, like the equivalent of Pastor Trace, and basically the response they gave was, we worked on our systems. In a church setting, you've got systems, don't you? You've got an assimilation system, the system by which people are assimilated into a church. Right? You've got a discipleship system. You've got a caregiving or counseling system. You've got a financial system. Okay? And I can tell you right now, in this setting, there's certain systems we've got that I think are very strong. I think our financial system is quite strong. Okay? I think our assimilation system, aspects of it are okay, but there's so much we have to implement. And if you've studied assimilation and the science of it, for example, did you know that if someone walks into a church, You know that one of the first questions they're asking in the first few minutes is, will I make friends with the people here? Can they be my friend? Are they relatable? Because a lot of people come to church for community, don't they? Now that has to be addressed by an assimilation system. Does that make sense? Okay. So we need to evaluate the current systems that are used by the team. What about our communication system? We're going into a place now where we're going to be looking at a very powerful communication tool, right, that we're going to be using. A tool where literally at the touch of a button, how would, what's his name, Steve Jobs say it, when it comes out? We'll do the reveal soon. I don't want to say too much about it, okay? But we'll be able to communicate to each other. We'll be able to monitor all sorts of things. We'll just press tabs. Okay, and his surname will be there, Nechi Vungululu. Okay, if it can fit on the thing. But anyway, we'll just press, and we'll literally be able to see, has he been through rebuild? Okay, is he a member of the church, right? What's his phone number? Which Go group is he a part of? We'll literally have all of that information, right? As people come in and update their address, their physical address, or what suburb they live in, they can do that. They can update that, and we'll be able to see that real time. We don't have to be the ones. He doesn't have to come with a piece of paper and say, we've now moved, we're now staying in this part of Joburg, this is our address. He'll be just doing that. Powerful, powerful system. Okay? I give my team members direct feedback. Now, a lot of people struggle with this, eh? A lot of times we give feedback, but it's indirect. Have you noticed that? Guys, if we want to be great leaders, we have to be deliberate about giving people feedback. And I think sometimes people are too sensitive. You have different types of sensitivity, by the way, when it comes to emotional sensitivity, hey? There's some people, for example, let's just talk about being sensitive to smells. It was my wife's first night back was Tuesday night. She went up to her pillow. She was about to go to bed, and she smelled her pillow. She's like, my pillow is smelling. Have the kids been using my pillow? Because sometimes they like her pillows. And then she says, here, smell. And I smell. I can't smell anything. Then she replaces the pillowcase. But the point I'm making is people have different sensitivity when it comes to sense of smell. Even when it comes to sounds, right? Some people are like, these people are disturbing me. Please keep quiet. But you are there and you've just blocked out the sound. Do you know that when it comes to emotional sensitivity, people are sensitive to different things? Some people are sensitive to words. You know those people who literally say, but he said this to me and he said I'm this. And they'll go and they'll look it up. They'll look up that word in the dictionary. And then you say to them, but that person said that when they were angry. And English is their third language. So they barely understand what that word means. Now you're going and looking in the dictionary for that word that this person used. Okay? Some people are sensitive to words. Other people are sensitive to tone. So they'll say to you, these people, it was so horrible. This is what they said. And you think, that's a normal thing for someone to say. Why are you being so sensitive? See, Paul, just the way he said it was so prickly. It was such a dig. And Paul, you had to be there to actually see. Okay? Sensitive to tone. And sometimes it's not because of how that person has spoken to you. Sometimes it's because of your own wounds. Other people are sensitive to body language. Oh, Paul, he said this to me. He said we must hurry up and do this. He was just so forceful. Why do you say that? Paul, just his presence, the way he walked into the room and he had this big pot belly and this big beard and he just walked in and he said we must hurry up. Would you have reacted differently if it was a small guy saying that to you? Yeah, Paul, he's just got this presence. He reminds me of this guy who used to bully us at school. Some people are very sensitive to that. Some people are sensitive to exclusion. For me, I'm happy when I'm not invited to stuff because I'm like, I can have a breather. I can enjoy my space. But other people, they had that function and they didn't invite us. I wasn't invited, right? So when you understand that, yes, it's good to be sensitive in terms of when you're giving feedback. So if I know you're sensitive to a choice of words, I'm able to say, when I'm saying this, this is what I'm meaning. But I must still be able to give direct feedback. If you know you're a loud person, don't go to someone who's not a loud person. Don't go to a Sunera and be like, hey, Sune, what's up? So she'll be overwhelmed by it. Okay? It's called behavioral matching. Okay, this is a whole nother topic. It's called behavioral matching. But guys, on the flip side, don't be too sensitive. If you're given feedback by someone, Joan is happy now. The other side is like, yes, yes, yes. All the people who like to give direct feedback, they're like, yes, 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 konapo, konapo. Don't be sensitive. You know what I've learned? Even if someone speaks to me in a horrible way, I have to find out, Lord, what can I learn? You must be so passionate about learning and growing, right? More passionate about that than your fear of being hurt. Because sometimes it can be an ouch when you're given the feedback, right? But the person's heart is good. They're doing it to protect you. They love you, right? They just have a direct style. And very often when someone gives you direct feedback, they're giving you direct feedback partly because they appreciate direct feedback. They don't have an issue with it. So they tend to think everyone is like that also. Okay? Don't take things personally. Sometimes you say to someone, oh, can you just please, you left a bit of dust there. Can you just clean it up, please? Oh, guys, you left that event at the church venue, but I came in the following day and the dishes had not been washed. Please, next time, can you just do so? And people are, the pastor doesn't like me. He thinks I'm a terrible person. He thinks I'm really lazy. Pastor, I'm not always like that. Yeah, this is the reason why. Like, relax. I still think you're awesome. I'm just trying to help you. Okay? There was someone, I won't mention names, but there was someone I gave feedback recently about a particular thing. Then a day later, they were like, Pastor, and they do a triple checking. You know when people start triple checking and overcompensating? I'm like, relax. Okay? Are you giving your members direct feedback? A powerful feedback tool is SBI. You've heard me share this before. Situation, behavior, impact. If we're in a drama group, if myself and Taffy are in a drama group and Taffy pitches up late, do I go up to him and I say, Taffy, I'm concerned about your commitment levels. You're not that committed. What's wrong, dude? We'll start having an argument about commitment levels, right? Why? Because that was a judgment. It wasn't feedback. But if I say to him, situation, that's the context. Taffy, do you remember 3 months ago at the AGM, we decided that we're going to shift rehearsal time from 4 p.m. to 3 p.m., and everyone was happy with that. Do you remember? Yes, yes, yes. Behavior. What is this observable behavior? What did I observe? In other words, what can be recorded by a camera? But I've observed that in the last 3 rehearsals, you've arrived after 3:30. Now, if there was CCTV camera there, you'd see Taffy 3:33, 3:42, 3:50. Right? I'm not saying it's because you're lazy. I'm not saying because you're not committed. It's not a judgment. This was your behavior. Then impact. Taffy, this impacts me on a few counts. I feel very stressed out, especially near the start, because I rely on you heavily for the first act. Secondly, impact number 2, I'm concerned for you in terms of your personal brand and how it comes across. Thirdly, I'm also concerned that the younger actors and actresses will follow suit and also start pitching up late. Okay? Can you see I've given him the impact? Extremely powerful. And sometimes it can be SBI squared. In other words, SBII. And the last I is improvement. Improvement. So what would I like you to do differently? And that can be a conversation. Hey, what do you think we can do differently? And he might say, you know what, Paul, let's have a dry run 15 minutes before the session starts. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Does that make sense? And direct feedback is not just for negative things that are developmental. You also give direct feedback for positive things. So instead of just going up to someone, you can go up to someone and encourage them and say, hey, that was a great talk you did. That's fine. You can do that. But they might think you're flattering them. They might actually see it as, you know what, you just say this to everyone, or you want something from me. Now, don't call it feedback. Call it a word of encouragement. Okay? How do you make it into feedback? How do you make that into feedback? When you gave that presentation to those difficult stakeholders last week, right? That's the context. During your talk, you included me by asking if I had anything to add or anything to subtract. You also used a lot of research to back up your proposal. Okay? Those are things that can be observed by the camera. Impact. The way it impacted me is I felt so informed. I felt really included, particularly because I'm not yet technically strong in your field. I'm looking forward to working with you. Okay? When you catch someone doing the right thing, when you catch them doing the right thing and you affirm them for it, they end up replicating it. But if you just say, great job, they don't know how to replicate it. If you study the science of feedback, feedback must be something you can replicate. Have you told me something I can do again? Okay? The next affirmation, I intentionally identify specific training areas of training for my team. This is super powerful. The people that are following your leadership need to know you're passionate about their development. Have you noticed that when you've got a boss at work, a leader at work, and they put your name forward for some course, how do you feel toward them? You feel great, don't you? You feel like, wow, they want me to grow, they want me to develop. There's no agenda here. You know that one of the basic needs we have as human beings is the need to grow. It's the need for progress, isn't it? That's why when you're stuck in traffic, what do? You're stuck and you're not moving, or you're going at 5 k's an hour. You'd rather take the longer route because you feel like, at least I'm making progress. Okay? So, you don't have to be the person training them. But can you identify other people who can train them? Can you identify, even if it's YouTube links? You know that when Sunera sends those little videos, those links to the Go Kids teachers, that contact she has, how do you feel, guys? Those of you in children's ministry. It feels good, doesn't it? Oh, here are tips for fathering. Here's something I found. Why? We all want to learn and we all want to grow. Okay? So, are you good at identifying the gaps in your team? A lot of times we're good. We can identify the gaps. But you know what? When you look at specific areas of training, you're not just looking at the gaps. You're also looking at how to fill those gaps. When I work with teams, often people say, yeah, no, we know what our gaps are, and they'll list them. What are you doing to solve them? What are you doing to fill the gap? Actual. Okay, and then there's nothing, right? I always have clear priorities. A lot of people, their biggest frustration, whether it's at work, whether it's at church, in the home, they feel like everything is urgent. How many of you are in that place? Where you've got 1,000,001 things to do, but you're frustrated because you don't know what to do first. The job of a leader is to show people that, guys, this month, this is what we must focus on. This is the most important. If you look at our vision here, we've got those 5 things that we talk about. What's the most important right now? What are we emphasizing right now? What's the space we're in right now? I coach lots of people, and one of the big complaints often is, Paul, it's like everything is urgent. And you know why? It's because a lot of leaders, remember with those graphic equalizers we used to use when we were growing up with those beat boxes? Everything would be on 100 for some people. They thought that's the best sound. Bass, treble, tenor, whatever it is, it's all on 100, okay? But we know that to get the best sound, sometimes you'll have maybe something on 70, something on 20, okay? So that it's mixed nicely, right? So I want to ask you, are you clear about your priorities? You as a person. There's the A, B, C, D, E, F, G of prioritization. I don't know if I've shared this with some of you, right? When you come up with your to-do list, have a to-do list. It's wonderful having a to-do list. But what I encourage you to do is basically to then order and prioritize, right? To say, this is my to-do list for the week or for the next 2 weeks. But then you now have your A items. And your A items, where you put an A next to them, those are the things that are important and also quite urgent. Then the items where you put a B next to them, those are the things that are not quite at the level of A items. They're quite urgent, but not necessarily important. Then your C items are the things that are nice to do. Those are the things we like doing, right? And we call them C because it's nice. Nice C, you see? All right? Then your D items are the things you can delegate. Very often we write out things on our to-do list, but if we're honest with ourselves, they're things we can be delegating. Moms in this place, ask yourself, what do my kids need from me that only I can give them? Do those things and the rest you can delegate. If you're leading a team, ask yourself, what does my team need from me that only I can give them? The The rest, delegate. For my wife and I, in terms of leading you guys, very often we're in a situation where I'll say, my love, you don't need to do that because you're just going to go back to that space you were in the past where you were hands-on for so many things. Some of you remember those days where she was, playing piano over here. She was involved in children's. She was involved in ops, etc. All right? I sometimes have to ask myself, what do you need from me that only I can give? Right? There's certain things that I'll focus on. There are other things that I'm doing that other people could be doing. Right? You know that some research found that people, generally speaking, spend 20% of their time doing what they were born to do, and the other 80% doing what other people could be doing. Imagine how productive it would be if you inverted that. If 80% of your time was spent doing what you were born to do, and 20% the other stuff, that admin that we all have to do. I said to Pastor Vim and others today in a group that we're part of, a pastoral group, I said to them, please pray for me. I'm about to give a talk at such and such a school. But I added onto it, I said, I'm going to do what I was born to do. One of the moms at my kids' school said, how do you and Tracy do it? You seem to be like everywhere. I think they were seeing things on Facebook, like she's in Berlin preaching, and then next thing she's doing a race or something, and then we're now at this function. So it seems like we're so busy, which we are. Then I said, the answer I give people when they ask me that about myself, I say, I'm doing what I was born to do. So when you're doing what you're born to do, there's a grace to do it, and you can be extremely productive. But most people are doing what they want to do. Or they're acting out of fear instead of doing what they were born to do. But that's a topic for another day, right? Some of you want me to go to E items. Paul, just tell me, so what's E? What's E? What's E? Okay. So E items are items you can eliminate. They were relevant last year, but they're not relevant this year. You notice, they're things we continue doing out of habit. And can you see these principles? You can actually apply them to your team. What are the things your team should be delegating to another team, cross-functionally? It's not your team's responsibility. I know a particular organization where they were saying, we find here they don't get rid of people. Paul, they don't get rid of people who aren't performing. They literally will create another team that ends up doing the work that these guys who are poor performers were supposed to be doing. Another team is created to do it. Okay? So E is items to eliminate. And F is items to become flexible with, flexibility. Do you really have to have that meeting, or can you have it telephonic? Do you really, really, really have to go to that function, or can you just wish the person, happy birthday, it's been real, I'll send you a present, here's an ebook for you. You don't always have to go. I was coaching someone the other day at one of the banks, and they were finished, tired. And they're like, my husband has already gone to the airport, Paul. Yeah, there's a funeral there. But I actually am calling him. I'm saying to him, you know what? I think let's just rethink this thing. You can go ahead, but I really want to just stay at home this weekend and veg. For some of you, you go to places out of obligation. Is it what God is telling you to do? Do you have to be there? Do you ever go to a function and you feel so guilty because you hadn't gone? Then you get there and the people don't even notice you. And you're like, why did I come? Why did I come? Okay. I always have clear priorities. I remember I was quite anxious on Saturday because we had been invited to a function, a birthday party that was starting at 5:30. But I was still at my TV shoot. And I remember contacting my wife saying, right? Now, I could have spoiled my evening by being anxious, saying, guys, quickly, cameramen, guys, quickly. But then I just contacted the person who was hosting it, and I just said, listen, I'm still at the TV shoot, so we're going to come a bit late. And prior to that, I'd sort of primed them that we won't be there the whole time. And the person was so relaxed about it. Happy TV shoot, we'll see you later. And then I speak to my wife, and my wife was like, you know what, there are going to be 120 guests. I'm sure they're happy that we're just going to pop in. Right? We got there at about just before 8. We were there for about 3 hours. We left just after 11. We had an awesome time with old friends, and it was fine. And they were thanking us so much for being there. Okay? So be careful what you do out of obligation. This is a powerful one. On principle, I don't accept work that is below the designated standard. On principle, I don't accept work that is below the designated standard. There's some stuff I'm going to be working on with Sunera, so she's giving me this nervous look like, oh, what's the standard? What's the standard? Oh. Okay, here's the principle of a deliberate leader. You know what the principle is? People become how they are seen by authority figures whom they respect and admire after 5 years. People become how they are seen by authority figures whom they respect and admire after 5 years. So if someone submits to you substandard work and you just accept it, that's who they become. They just remain average and mediocre. But if you stretch them and you say, you're not giving me your best, this isn't how I know you, and you stretch them a little, they become that. I want to encourage you to be a deliberate leader and don't accept substandard work. Even if it's fine, the client will be okay with it. Okay? Let's keep the standards high. Let's keep the quality high. You know? Right? I think you guys have seen in this church, when we preach messages, we're well prepared. I think you've seen that. Okay? We take it seriously. Okay? Whether they're 2 people or 2,000 people. Right? If we have meet sessions like this on Monday nights, you see the preparation that goes into it. Whether they're 2 people or 2,000. Why? We're doing it as unto the Lord. And that's a secret, in terms of how God promotes people. If you think of my situation, all those days, some of you were recipients of this, where I would do back-to-back marriage counseling in one of these rooms here. Sometimes I would have 5 people. I would have had training I'm conducting all day, full day training. And I would come here, and from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock, I'm counseling couples. Right? And the couples are saying, wow, your stuff is so cool. Oh, we read this chapter. Oh, we're blown away by this. And it started getting frustrating for me because I'll be thinking, yeah, but when is the world going to see it? And then the door opens in terms of this TV thing. And most pastors want to, they're trying to go onto the Christian channels. They're not even thinking that they could ever get onto the mainstream TV. And that door opens straight for me. And those very same tools, those of you who've been watching the episodes and so on, you're like, I remember that one. Oh yeah, I remember that was homework he gave us. Yeah, we didn't quite finish the homework, yeah, but I remember that one, those card games and so on. Right? So I want to encourage you, what you do in secret has great results. And God rewards what he sees in secret. Right? And you want to encourage your people to also have a high standard, regardless of who's watching. The next affirmation, I intentionally ask my team to give me the best. Can you see that these two work together? And the way you do this is you gain commitment from your team, where you say, guys, we're about to start this project, but can you give the team your best? One of the marks of great leaders is they establish commitment. From the very start, they establish commitment. Remember, leadership is about direction, alignment, and commitment. You set direction, you make sure everyone is aligned in terms of the values, and then you establish commitment. Guys, are you in or are you out? And you know what often happens so sadly? Often people are there, they're there just with their head and their hands and their feet, but they're not their heart and soul. Ask yourself, in the role that you play in this local church, are you in heart and soul? In the role that you play as a leader in the workplace, are you in heart and soul? There's something about heart and soul that God can work with. I actively pursue solutions to fill the identified gaps in my team. Powerful thing to do. Remember, I mentioned to you, we're very good at identifying gaps, but a lot of times we're not as good at filling those gaps. Are we actively pursuing solutions to fill the gaps? Something for us to think about, right? And how do you do that? How do you brainstorm with each other? You make decisions through what we call agile thinking. So you don't just use one part of your brain. See, a lot of people are strong when it comes to logical analysis. That's one way of coming up with solutions. But guys, you'll limit yourself as a leader if you just use logical analysis. What are the other ways? Scenario planning. Look at the different scenarios and come up with solutions. What's another way of thinking? Evidence-based thinking. Look for the evidence. What's the evidence? Do your research. What's another way of thinking? Possibility thinking. What is possibility thinking? Guys, let's just dream. Let's brainstorm. Have you noticed that some people struggle with that? You're dreaming and you're brainstorming and they're saying, that won't work. You're dreaming and you're brainstorming. No, that won't work. You're dreaming and you're brainstorming. No, we don't have enough money. No, we're not in logical analysis. We are now in possibility thinking. So you find out what the dream is. Then we can switch over to logical analysis. Does that make sense? Okay. So there are different ways of thinking. There's also systems thinking, where you look at the broader ramifications of a decision. So you find some people just think, this is what's going to affect ushering, or this is what's going to affect children's. But they don't always think in terms of, how is this going to impact the other team? The nice thing in this environment is many of you are very strong in terms of systems thinking. You're not just passionate about your area. You're also interested in this and how will it affect this and this and this and this. Okay? That's important. I do things to keep my team aligned to our goals. That's about clarifying the win. What are you actively doing to keep your team aligned to the goals? Can you see that's the monitoring and evaluation? That's the inspection. Okay? I promise you, if we don't do this diligently, some people will go off the reservation. You know that term when people go off the reservation? They go on their own mission. Okay? I do things to keep my team aligned to our pre-decided values. If you sit down and you say, guys, these are our values, the first thing you do is you might say, value number 1, mutual respect. Value number 2, results-based. Value number 3, professionalism. Value number 4, integrity. Value number 5, customer orientation. You might come up with certain values, right? As we work together in a church setting, we've got certain values. Are you making sure your people are aligned to the values? One of the ways of doing so is you have a conversation cafe. So you get some flip charts and you basically say, guys, these are our 5 core values. But let's talk about what these values look like at a behavioral level. Mutual respect. Then you say, if you're observing someone who's strong on respecting others, what's the behavior? And you have to be able to record it with a camera. And what will they say? Oh, they don't raise their voice. Oh, they don't use foul language. Can you see why you have to unpack it so that it's very behavioral? I remember being in a situation where a particular person was heading up a team, one of the banks. They said to me, Paul, there's been a mutiny against me. People have put in a grievance against me. I was like, oh, okay, what happened? And she went on and described the situation. Now, when I had coached this individual, I'd asked them, what are your core values? And one of them was respect. And I said, what did that look like? And he says, Paul, when people raise their voice, it's not nice. We don't do that in our household. I don't like when people raise their voice. Oh, okay. Interesting thing is, I then had to lead an intervention into that team. And the one person who had done this mutiny thing and put in this grievance and so on, she was raising her voice. She was literally shouting at her boss. And I asked that individual, I said, what are your core values? And one of them, she said, Paul, respect. I said, what does it look like? And she says to me, Paul, you know what? I come to work early. She was an older woman. She was about 54 at the time. She says, Paul, I come to work early. So when my boss, the lady we were talking about, so when my boss sets up a meeting with me early, I expect her to come on time. But sometimes she still pitches up late and then expects me to just drop whatever I'm doing and still have the meeting when she's the one who's pitched up late. But my time is just as important as her time. So I feel disrespected when she does it. Can you see the power of having a conversation cafe where we're not just talking about our core values or our espoused values. We're actually talking about the behaviors behind those values. And let me just say something. This is also powerful to do as a family. It's powerful to do as a family at home. Okay? So I'm not saying to my kids, I'm not just saying to them, okay, guys, you must be respectful to older people. Each time an older person greets them before they greet the older person, I'm nailing them. I'm like, guys, you should be the one greeting before. Does that make sense? It's a behavior. It's a behavior. Think about how you were raised, how you were brought up. There are certain things we do, but there were specific behaviors, right? I regularly ask my team for feedback on my behavior and approach. This is how I learn. A deliberate leader doesn't just wait for feedback. A deliberate leader asks for feedback. We went to see Stuart and Sally Ann see their baby today, and as we were driving there, I said to my wife, so my love, where are you in your love tank? Scale, 0 to 10. She said, I'm on a 9, right? But despite the fact that she said she was on a 9, I still said to her, what can I do to take you from 9 to 10? And then she gave me some things that I need to do, which is none of your business for me to tell you. So the point I'm making is that I needed feedback to know what to focus on so that it's not guesswork. Okay? Should I tell you what she said? I'm a sunshine yellow, I feel like telling you. No, maybe she won't be happy with me, it's fine. You know me, guys, I could have told you, man, because we're family, you know what I'm saying? But maybe she might not. So guys, solicit feedback from your people. I'm almost done. So what you do is, if I come up to you and I say, did you like my talk? Did you like my presentation? It's very difficult for you to then say, no, we actually didn't like it. But if I come to you and I say, Malope, in our sermons and what we preach, what else do we need to be targeting? What could we do a bit differently? Can you see how she might then feel? She might then feel like, oh, okay, these guys are actually soliciting feedback and they're open to feedback. Does that make sense? How you ask a question as a leader is crucial. And when you are open to feedback and you model that, hey, guys, you can speak to me, guess what happens? I also feel free to then do it to you. And then it's reciprocal, isn't it? Okay? I intentionally say and do things to enforce team values. So what are the values that you want to create? And are you intentionally saying things to enforce those values and doing things to enforce those values? So as I left home earlier on, I shouted out and I said to CCT, who helps us at home, I said, oh yeah, no, in fact, my wife and I were going to get Daniel from soccer. And I said, CCT, yeah, just tell the other boys to do some work. And tell them if they don't, they'll lose game time. The nice positive is because they like computer games so much, is it's a nice leverage for us, when it comes to discipline and so on. Just tell them they'll lose game time if they haven't done enough work. And just go, do. But I'm reinforcing a value in terms of learning. Okay? And here you can use all the principles we covered when we spoke about how to create culture. You can use this. Can you see the power of being a deliberate leader? You're always thinking about these things. A lot of times people don't do this. Do you know why? Most leaders are busy putting out fires. We're putting out fires, so we're not giving ourselves enough time to reflect. And that's a problem. Everyone in my team is aware of the team values. They must be aware of what those values are, and not just the espoused values, but the behavior associated with the value. If you say professionalism, do they know what it looks like? You can tell a company that hasn't taught its people professionalism. Why? They're in a nice fancy building. They've got a nice fancy logo, a nice fancy website. But when you phone them, what happens? You phone them and it's, hello, hello, and there's a lot of background noise. There's no music, nothing, and so on. It's not professional. Okay? Everyone in my team is aware of the team values. Something to think about. Everyone in my team is aware of my personal approach to leadership. We spoke about that earlier on. Okay? Everyone in my team is aware of our goals. Everyone in our team is aware of how their performance will be measured. This is a tricky one, isn't it? How many of you can safely say in what you are doing right now, in the church or at work, you're extremely clear about how your performance will be measured? The honest truth is, even those of you who've got those wonderful balanced scorecards and that kind of thing in the workplace, how often are those aligned to what you actually do? And a big complaint that comes up in the workplace often is, Paul, you know what? The thing that the boss stresses about and is emphasizing and asking me to do, it's not on my balanced scorecard. Or sometimes there's that frustration where it's like double standards. Sometimes they say, this is the objective, this is where we're going. 3 months down the line, it's changed. I want to encourage you as leaders, make sure that everyone around you is clear about how their performance will be measured. Those of you who are running small groups, do you know what good looks like? Do you know what will make whoever you report to jump with joy saying, yes, we've done it? What is that? Everyone in my team is aware of the consequences of non-compliance. Do you know what will happen if you drop the ball? You know what I've realized? Some people, for example, in a lot of organizations, they'll say, my performance rating will go down. So they're only aware of one aspect of the consequence. But as a leader, it's your job to say, you know what the other piece is? You're actually causing me to feel drained when you don't perform. You know what the other piece is? You're actually demotivating the people who look up to you. Do you know what the other piece is? You're actually making things difficult for us cross-functionally with that other team. Can you see that there are multiple layers of consequences when you don't perform, right? Let me ask you a question. In your marriage, do you know what the consequences are of non-compliance? The biblical consequences. Not just, my wife won't be happy, my husband won't be happy. The Bible says, husbands, deal with your wives with understanding, lest your prayers be hindered. So when I don't deal with my wife with understanding, you know the scripture I'm talking about, right? Husbands, deal with your wives with understanding. Honor them as the weaker vessel, not weaker as in weaker, but weaker as in fragile, handle with care, lest your prayers be hindered. One of the consequences of not studying my wife and not understanding her is it affects the vertical breakthrough that I want to get. Amen? Do you understand the consequences of non-compliance? Are you as a leader able to go up to your people and actually say, guys, if we are not effective in welcoming people at that door, there's some people who will make a decision never to come again. And you know what the research shows, ladies and gentlemen? Research shows that in a church setting, people actually decide in the first 4 minutes. You see, we're thinking, let's preach a powerful message, let's do a nice altar call, then we'll hook them in. Very often people come to church for the first time before everyone else, because they haven't been there before. And you know, when it's your first time somewhere, you don't know how long it takes. So very often, first-time visitors are sitting right here, waiting. And they're already making a decision about whether they're going to come back or not. So if you are a door greeter, but you're arriving at 9:30 when the church is about to start, you've already missed an opportunity. That person, I can tell you right now, has already made a decision that, hey, it wasn't quite what I expected, Hey. And that's when they're feeling most insecure. They're not feeling that insecure after they've enjoyed the worship, enjoyed the word. It's when they walk in and they're wondering, have I come to a cult, have I come to a good church or not? Everyone in my team is aware of the consequences of non-compliance. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.